Okay, so Sebastian Paul, hi, how are you?
Hi, Eli. Yeah, I'm really well. Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. I'm very happy. And so you are a co-founder and a herbalist of Buka Herbs. It's a worldwide company which works with small farmers. Am I correct?
We work with a range of growers around the world, but yes, I'm one of the co-founders at Pucker, and we essentially want to connect people with the power of plants and do good along the way.
Great. And you also work with the communities, and I think it's written in Wikipedia that you work with 5,000 growers. It's a big amount of.
Yeah, we have an extensive network around the world. We grow about 200 species of organic herbs that are all
Wow.
grown to practitioner grade. So they're all of a pharmacopoeial grade of herbs. So they're the highest quality herbs you use for therapeutic effects. And and yeah, we work in about 30 different countries
Mm-hmm.
for our plants, and that is an extensive system of organic growers. Actually, there are different sized farms we work with. Eli, some of them are very small scale farmers. They may have 1 or 2 acres.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and some of them are group projects where there may be a community in a collective. We also work with wild harvesting as well. So we gather from the wild and we work through a sustainable collection program called Fair Wild to make
Mm-hmm.
sure that the horse is looked after, the land is, the plants and the ecosystem is looked after, as well as the collectors.
Wow.
Um, and then we do have some bigger farms we work with where some crops are grown on a field scale.
I
That
want actually to thank you personally because in my own practice, my name is Eliyahu Boger. I'm an expert in seasonal diet and homeopathy and Ayurveda. And I want to say that in my personal practice, it is very important to have well-known herbs like origin, which is like extremely important for me because I see that if the herbs don't come from a very known place, that I'm not sure about them, and it's really important for me when I treat people to have the best quality. And I really thank you for that. I'm working with you for the last 7 years, so really I thank you a lot.
Thank you. I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, one of the reasons I set Pucker up was because, like you, I'm a practitioner and I have a clinic, and I wanted to provide my patients with the best quality herbs that we could um, in terms of quality, but also sustainability. And I really wanted to make sure that the plants we provided were good for human health and good for the planet's health as well.
That's really
So
important.
it's
Yeah, I
important to
think
us
this
we know where the herbs
combination
come from.
is I think one of the most important things for us in humanity to do. Okay, I want to tell you my personal story. Actually, I told it to you already, but I want to tell it to the audience as well, so we can go into the interview. So I grew up on a healthy diet, mainly like it was influenced by macrobiotic diet. I was eating mainly whole grains, fish, not eating so much meat and milk, organic vegetables and fruits. And slowly I found out this kind of diet was a little bit rigid for me and very, very like always the same. And I think it's one of the reason why I got IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, and I lost something like 18 kilos when I was younger than now. And what really changed my life is that I understood that nutrition must be more flexible and must match me personally and change from season to season. So I want to ask you, how did you understand about the importance of the flexibility of diet, if you find this to be important?
Mm. Well, a bit like you and I was luckily introduced to Ayurveda
Yes.
at quite a young age when I was about 18.
Mm-hmm.
And I I started to experiment with my diet, really. I started
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
realize that what I ate made me feel different, and
Yes.
depending on the volume of the food, the type of food, the state of my digestion, where I was in the world would influence how I felt.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went on a big journey into Ayurveda and really exploring the subtleties of different spices, different ways of cooking, and the depth in Ayurveda that teaches us how to follow our own digestive fire, how to follow our own constitution, and how to follow the season, I think is a priceless gift to the world. And
It
it
is.
can
I agree
transform your health.
completely. I want just to add a disclaimer here that if any one of the viewers have any medical condition, you must consult a doctor, and any use of the information that we talk about is for your own responsibility. It's important, I think, for everyone to know. And also I want to ask for the audience, if we can keep the talk like quite simple in medical terms from Ayurveda, like more like talking about heating and cooling than, more sophisticated, if that's okay with you. I think it's
Sure. I'm a pretty simple person, Eli, so we'll keep it pretty straightforward.
Great. Okay. First of all, what are the benefits of eating according to the season? I think this is something that many people ask me.
I think, we are, as humans, we're not separate from the world around us.
Yes,
we are a part of the ecosystem and environment we live in. And of course, the environment is one of the biggest influences on our health. So the temperature outside, the quality of humidity or dryness in the air, in the atmosphere, and the types of foods that are available seasonally has an influence on our health by helping us adjust to the different requirements of that season. So, for example, if you live somewhere where it is very hot and dry, or the season is a warmer, drier season, then
which is here quite a common thing, yes.
Quite a regular feature. I didn't think a British example would be appropriate. It's very rainy here today. But if you live somewhere where it's hot and dry, then of course that can impact on the amount of fluids in your body, the levels of dryness in your body, and you need to make sure that dry heat that builds up in the environment does not negatively affect your health.
Okay, so you're saying that it's important to somehow have some kind of a buffer between you and the environment that keeps you balanced, keeps the balance inside of you at a good...
Yeah, I think you want to, for me, it's like a blueprint. You've got your constitution, and this is your pattern that is made up in Ayurveda of Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, if you're about that. And if you already have quite a lot of dryness in your body, and let's say, so you have dry skin, you might feel thirsty very regularly, you may feel dehydrated easily, you may have sort of dry or sluggish bowel motions, then you need to make sure that when you eat foods that are the opposite of the climate. So you would eat foods that are cooling and that are moistening or filled with fluids and lubricating.
In general, in Israel, that's something that is quite common for the people to something that can really help them, actually, I find out in my practice.
I mean, I think a lot of the culture in Israel is still very connected with natural cycles and the environment. And it's a helpful way to take charge of your health. If you follow the seasonal patterns of the weather and you adjust your diet accordingly, then it is a way of us remaining more in control and taking responsibility for our health.
Yes, which actually comes to another question, which is really interesting, that many times the vegetable and fruits that grow outside, like naturally, in our season, like now in the autumn, we have, for example, here in Israel, I don't know what you have, but we have pumpkins and sweet potatoes, and in the fruits we have dates, and which are all things which are more like warming and a little bit, and quite, humidifying the body.
Yeah.
Which is a very interesting thing. Do you have an explanation for that?
Well, I think in nature, it naturally provides certain foods that you need at various times of year. And I think that would be the pattern of the climate and environment one lives in. So using foods that naturally grow at certain times of year is a natural way to create balance in your diet. But of course, in our modern world now,
it's different.
type of food in any month, and so you have to watch that. But I think, for me, the real teachings of Ayurveda are they're all simple ideas. It's about creating a routine in your diet and your lifestyle. It's about studying your digestive fire and really getting acquainted with what is your particular way of how you need to eat, how much you need to eat, what foods suit you the best. And what is some of your ancestral tendencies? What are the patterns in your ancestors before? What would they have lived off? What can you be accustomed to?
That's actually a very interesting question. I have one of my colleagues. His name is Amir Lovker. He's a dietitian, a clinical dietitian in Soroka Hospital in south of Israel. It's one of the biggest hospital, and he works with cancer patients. He's in charge of the oncological department, as well as the bariatric committee. And he was asking us what is the importance of ancestral attributes in your diet. How should that be part of your diet, actually?
Well, I think it's crucial to think what our ancestors lived off, because that will be a part of our genetic inheritance and the tendencies that we're more likely to succeed under or to fail under. And so it's worth looking at what is a reality, isn't it, in your history? And I think it's well known and documented that if people from the East go to the West and start eating a Western diet with maybe lots of dairy, more a richer diet potentially, that has led to a certain rise in certain problems.
I see that.
I think it's well known that if a Japanese community goes to America, there's a much bigger rise in prostate cancer in men and breast cancer in women, because in the Japanese diet they've got a more protective influence.
Diet for that,
So I think it's important to look into that, but also not to get too worried in a way, because we live in a diverse world now. I think there's a lot of guilt issues around food and a lot of pressure with people. And one of the things that Ayurveda teaches is that there isn't really a right or a wrong. It's not a moral code of incorrect.
I agree with that completely.
It's about being choiceful and what is right for you and learning along the way. And it's not always about being 100% perfect. It's about finding a way to celebrate and enjoy the gifts and the bounty in nature, and to celebrate with food, with your friends and your family, to enjoy that gift. But of course, there are different needs. And, if someone's got a serious disease,
they need to adjust accordingly.
Your colleague working in an oncology department or any serious pathology, of course, you need to address that specifically. But day to day, you're normally looking at, rejuvenating your digestive fire with nice spices that can help increase the warmth. So fennel and cumin and coriander, these are all traditional spices across
many countries,
across the world. And oregano, basil. Using lots of herbs in your diet, I think, is a crucial thing to increase your digestive fire. Keeping away from foods that don't suit you, avoiding heavily processed foods where appropriate, and keeping it as fresh and as well cooked and as digestible as possible.
And beautiful as well. It's very important.
Yeah, absolutely. It's to be enjoyed. It's one of the, life is difficult to control in many areas, but we can control what we eat. So therefore it gives us the ultimate power.
All right. I want to come back to the autumn. First of all, I wonder about the autumn in England and in Europe. I guess it's different than the one in Israel, but still, I guess the dryness may be still there, right? I don't know how it is in Europe.
No, not over here. We get the idea in the autumn is that it would be traditionally an increase in vata, and that with the winds and the leaves drying, and you're getting a movement of energy from being external to being internal in a way. You're getting the energy of the plants moving the ground. So we get a bit of vata lightness and dryness aggravated in the autumn, but generally Northern Europe, it's pretty damp, wet and soggy most of the time
Yes.
throughout the autumn and the winter. And so at this time of year, we tend to transition our diets in an Ayurvedic sense to a more
Warm, I guess.
soupy, moisture-filled diet through the autumn that is light and easy to digest. And then we use foods throughout the winter that are able to offset some of the kapha and the fluids that build up in our environment.
Great. Can I ask you about personally, like what, can you give me an example of things that you eat at this moment?
Yes, I suppose through the autumn, coming out of the summer, where there might be more salads, there might be more steamed vegetables and lighter, a less volume of food as well in the summer. As we go through autumn, I'll be looking at. I mean, I always eat a lot of khichdi, but probably increasing the amount of khichdi and maybe making it a bit more moist at this time of year as well, so adding more water.
All right. And are there like special vegetables that you recommend to your patients at this time of the year, or?
Well, at this time of the year, you know, I always find it difficult to generalize, actually, because
that's true. I'm sure.
That's the person. But you know, at this time of year, there is you know, a greater, you know, nature has given us lots of pumpkins.
Yes, exactly.
Lots of brassicas, cabbages, things like this. And so it's, you know, really trying to increase the nutrient density at this time of year. So you're having, you know, warm bowls of moist, richly dense foods. That's how I would adjust the diet at this time of year.
All right, I do the same. I just actually I find the red color to be very important in this time of the year.
Right, you like
the red orange actually.
The sweet potatoes and the sweet pumpkins and things like this.
Exactly.
You know, there's no doubt food should be colorful because it makes it more tasty. And,
so we have avocados actually starting now also in Israel, which are also moist in a way.
Okay. You're blessed in Israel with lots of
That's true, actually. We are blessed. We don't actually recognize that always, but in this section we have a lot of variety. That's true. Okay, so next thing I wanted to ask, or people may be interested, is which kind of problems are more common in this time of the year that you see more in your clinic or people around you?
Yeah. I think it's interesting that there is a fluctuation in what turns up in the clinic and in pathology around each of the seasons. And in the autumn, over here in the UK, we see a propensity to greater anxiety, potentially more restless sleep, and insomnia. And then, of course, there's a start of the increase in colds and upper respiratory tract infection. And so I would always look to offset that by using a vata balancing and vata grounding lifestyle. And there are certain herbs that I always look to use at this time of year. So ashwagandha, for example.
Ashwagandha, that's important. I must add that from my experience, in this time of the year, many people suffer from respiratory problems, especially in Israel, that are connected to dryness, because they tend to get like a dry lungs, like a dry cough, and many times people tend to take herbs for like more mucousy lungs and mucousy. And so, like, for example, turmeric, and I find that it can even aggravate the situation, which is it's a point which is important for many people to know.
It is. I mean, when you live in quite an extreme climate, as Israel is, where there is this sort of more extreme dryness, you need to be really quite careful about that, and you want to be using moistening, nourishing herbs. So actually, herbs like shatavari, aloe vera, they can be very useful where there is this dry cough. And also, I don't know if you know it, but we make something called elderberry syrup, and elderberry is like it's like Europe's best remedy for removing upper respiratory tract infections.
All right.
And in fact, most of the research happened in Israel. about
Really?
20 years or so ago. I can't remember the name of the doctor actually, but there was this great research looking at elderberry being useful against 12 different types of virus.
I looked at it. I will find it.
And it's said to be, most of the flu remedies that are allopathic are only specific for one or two viruses. So yeah, it's also a good time of year to include, if you are getting dry lungs and upper respiratory tract, then ghee, of course.
Yes, and onions. I think onion is very important.
Onion, you like to use that.
Garlic.
That can be good as well. And then, honey is always good as well for helping to loosen and lubricate the respiratory tract.
That is actually an interesting question, because when I read in the scripture, I find many times that honey is connected more to drying the body.
Well, it is written about in Ayurveda that honey is astringent and good for kapha.
Yes.
But it's more because it acts as a counter lubricant, and when you take honey and you have kapha, it helps you expel more.
Yes, exactly.
But honey is also lubricating. It is not necessarily solely drying in the body, and when you have a dry cough, honey can be very good counterbalance to that as well.
Yeah, especially if joined with other spices, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. You can mix it with things. So, like you were saying, that turmeric can be drying, but if you mix turmeric with ghee and honey,
exactly,
in the correct proportions, then you can offset that so-called effect.
All right. Next issue interests our readers. Is someone, my colleague is called Ilani Freeman. She's an emotional consultant. And she asked for her readers, what is the influence of the autumn on our emotions? Which emotions are more in common in this season?
Yeah. Well, I think, as you get a rise, as you come out of the summer and you've had an increase in heat, and you come into latter season and the increase in dryness and movement,
yes,
as related with anxiety and insomnia, you tend to get an increase in worry, fear, and these sorts of emotions. And of course, it's also a big time for everybody in the family. It's after the summer holidays, people are back to work, children are back to school. Often there is a new start to the year. I'm not sure if that happens in...
Yes, it does. I think it does. Sure.
Isn't it? So, that idea of there being a new beginning can create a certain level of uncertainty in people. And so it's just a really good time of year to spend extra time doing practice, to connect with your body, to really
rest. Yeah, that's very important.
Place in the world, to sort of set your plan up for the next sort of 9 to 12 months. What are you going to achieve this year in your education and your learning, if that is appropriate to you.
All right.
And so, time of greater anxiety, worry, but also a really creative time. It's a time when, as we go more inwards with the change of the season, we can use that to reflect and to sow seeds for future potential.
Yes, I find this season to be very helpful to get new ideas to start new ideas and to start new projects, and they tend to actually I'm starting now this I have this project about seasonal diet and raising the knowledge about this topic.
Yeah, well, it's a good idea. I mean, it's a really good time to set intentions for the time ahead. It's a letting go of the summer and the bounty and growth, and it's a time to be reflective and be more internalized and to be more empowered in a way.
And be ready to germ out once the rain come, And
exactly.
Israel.
Be ready. Yes. Fertilize the soil so it's ready to flourish. Plant the seeds.
Okay, now I have a last question for professional herbalists, and I want to add this disclaimer that you should always consult a specialist before using medicinal herbs. Even I do so in my private health, because it's always important to have an external eye on what's happening.
Yes.
So which Paka herbs and supplements would you especially recommend for the autumn?
Well, again, depending on the situation, my go-to herb of choice would be ashwagandha.
For me too.
I know that ashwagandha is considered to be a little bit warming and a little bit drying in some climates, but it's the best herb for grounding batter.
Yeah, I find it. I use it a lot actually.
Nourishing and building. So ashwagandha is my go-to herb for the autumn. Then, if there are upper respiratory tract infections and there is an actual viral overload,
Yes.
we use andrographis.
Allographis.
Andrographis?
Yeah.
Because pitta has often accumulated in the summer heat, and then it can come. And even though andrographis is a bit drying, when there is upper respiratory tract infection, it can be very specific for helping that. Elderberry, I already mentioned, elderberry syrup there.
I'll look for that.
And then I imagine in Israel that shatavari would be very appropriate for, everybody, but particularly women, especially if there are any symptoms
Perhaps
of
with
dryness.
some like a more warming ingredient. I think the shatavari plus in poka it has some kind of.
We have a womankind for that, as we call it now, shatavari womankind, and it's got a range of herbs in it. Our womankind formula is really for fluctuations in the menstrual cycle to help bring order and balance. And you're right, shatavari on its own is a much more sort of simple but effective formula to just treat dryness and heat, really, and to be a major tonic, fertility tonic.
Yes. Okay, I want to thank you very much, Sebastian, for all of your answers. I'm sure that they will help many people.
Great.